we see a lot of things going on in charismatic Pentecostal churches. We see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let me explain what I mean. First of all, my background. I was raised in a Torah, legalistic Torah, observant, quasi-cultic church. I was born and raised in it. Third generation. That was my roots. And I got to be about 30 years old, and I was very, very hungry. I was in my late 20s, and I knew there was more. I wanted more of the Spirit, because we believed that the gifts of the Spirit were done away with and was not for us, like a lot of churches believe that. And when I would go and ask leaders about the gifts of the Spirit, specifically 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, they would go, oh, that's not for us, and they would change the subject real fast. And some of you maybe been in churches like that. Well, anyway, I kept searching and seeking, and eventually I received the baptism of the Spirit in my living room by myself when I was 30 years old. I'd never been in a Sunday church in my life except once. When I was like 6 years old, I went to a Baptist church with a little friend of mine. That was it. I did not know about Christian television. I did not watch these guys. I did hear Christian radio. I listened to some of those guys on Christian radio. But I'd never been in a Pentecostal church. I wouldn't have been caught dead there because of the way I was indoctrinated, or charismatic church. And so I received the baptism of the Spirit just because I was hungry and seeking Yah. And I mean, it came on me like oil and the love. And I didn't start speaking in tongues yet, but because I was still very close to that. But I started moving in the gifts of the Spirit, didn't even know what it was. I started wanting to pray for people, heal the sick, do spiritual warfare. That's how my wife and I met. And anyway, or that's an aspect of what brought us together in 1990, right shortly after that. And anyway, eventually I left the church I was born and raised in, went into a couple other Sabbath churches, and they had their issues, and they didn't believe in the gifts of the Spirit either, and I was just really hampered and hindered there. And so so for you guys listening on YouTube, I'm looking at two screens here. So I'm looking on my iPad too at the Zoom meeting. So I'll be looking down. Sometimes I'm looking at two different cameras here. So forgive me if I'm looking away, up and down and so forth. We've got a couple things going on. I've got three screens in front of me and looking at two different audiences. Anyway, moving right along. So eventually in the early 90s, I was frustrated with the legalism of Torah obedience. Not with Torah obedience, but legalism and the weirdness of the people that were in it. And so I went into Pentecostal charismatic Christianity full hog, including eating pork and putting up a Christmas tree, something I'd never done. Well, then I experienced the word of faith. I received, got a lot of, good things as well as bad things. Got ordained in a Foursquare church. And was involved in the prophetic and evangelistic, evangelism and all kinds of things, church leadership, youth, get involved in different ministries and things, many, and a quick learning. And by 1998, I already had come back to the Sabbath. About 96, 97. And 1998, we did a Passover Seder in our home. And then by 1999, I was back doing the feasts again. But it was a process. So Christine, to your situation, addressing your comment, I was reluctant because I began to see the witchcraft, the sorcery, the divination in the charismatic Pentecostal movements. I saw the true legitimate gifts of the Spirit operating. But I also saw people, leaders, people who claim to have the gifts of the Spirit, who claim to be prophetic. I saw the manipulation. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. What do I mean? I saw the power of positive thinking. I saw animal magnetism, group dynamics, and I began to study those things out. And at the same time, I was coming up against a New Age church that had sprung up in our town, a very, very large, very wealthy, very well connected at the highest levels of religion in the world, about 2 miles or 3 miles from where I'm talking to you right now. And I began to do spiritual warfare, and I began to study the science of the mind. They call them New Thought Christianity. But it was out of the science of the mind, and they did not preach the gospel message. They preached Buddha, and they preached all kinds of things while claiming to be Christian. And as I began to study them, I began to realize, I studied it so that I could develop written tracts and materials to pass out in my spiritual warfare activities against what they believed. And eventually that church folded. The buildings got torn down and ground to concrete. It was a huge campus, a whole complex. It got bulldozed down, literally ground up and pulverized by machines into gravel. These bunker-like, it looked like a little community college. And now there's a housing development sitting on there where I am now the arborist operating, taking care of the trees there. But anyway, and this is 30 years ago, when this operated. But I began to see the witchcraft, and I saw that some of that had come into the charismatic Pentecostal churches that I'd been a part of. And so as I'm coming back to the Torah, but this time as a spirit-filled believer, I asked the same question as you did, Christine. How do I know that the gifts of the Spirit are not, even though they're in the Bible, how do I know that what I see being manifested there is not a counterfeit? Because I began to study Hinduism and Kundalini and Satori. Some of you studied those terms. You know what I'm talking about. Studied the concept of nirvana. And I began to see that in all, just like you said, Christine, in all of those religions, they have the same things. They have the warm oil, the speaking in tongues, the feeling, the shaking, all of those things. And yet I can read in the Bible where all these things took place. So I said, how do I know that what I have been getting here in the charismatic Pentecostal churches, and I was involved in Foursquare, Assemblies of God, Vineyard, Word of Faith, Calvary Chapel, a bunch of them. And how do I know? So I put it all on a shelf for a period of a few weeks. I said, I'm going to wait. So I said, Lord, show me, make it clear to me. At the same time, I'd come back to the Sabbath, but I was not back to all of Torah yet, the biblical feasts and all that. And I had 4 young children, and I got to know how to raise these guys. They're, some of them are still in diapers, and their toddlers are very young. And so I said, Lord, I got to know how to raise them. I need to know how to lead my family. And I need to know what is true and what is not true. And I need to know, because if I need you to lead me back to Torah and confirm to me that you want me. I left the Torah. I went into charismatic, Christmas-keeping, pig-eating Christianity. And now I'm coming back out, this time with love in my heart and the Spirit and the joy and the understanding of grace. I learned all those things in the Sunday Christian church, not where I came from, but in the Sunday Christian church. I began to develop a love for the Jewish people in the land of Israel, which I didn't have that either. Yahweh was doing a work in my life. And I said, so show me. I prayed that prayer right here in this room where I'm talking to you, against my couch here in my office. It's 6 feet from me, 7 feet from me. And I got up and I left that prayer there at the throne room. And I went about my way. And it was 6 weeks later, I'm at the same couch praying about something, whatever. I don't know what I was praying about. All of a sudden it came to me. Because I told him, I said, when I come back to Torah, if you're leading me back to Torah, and I sensed that he was, I'm going to come back with leaping like David. How love I thy Torah. It is my joy. It is sweeter than honey, more precious than gold. And I said, once, if you're leading me back, this is truly you. I'm never going to leave it till the day I die, because I'm not going to be one of these people that flip back and forth, back and forth. So I'm praying about 6 weeks later after I made that initial prayer. All of a sudden it came to me. You want to know that these things that are happening out here in these other religions, compared to what you see, the true, the genuine, not the fabricated, not the stuff that, what's that guy that's all tattooed up from Canada? You know, he's and then he had an adult. He was a few years ago. He's from British Columbia. I'll think of his name. I don't care. I don't care if I name names or not. But he was all tattooed up. He was sweeping across the United States. He was on the Sid Roth show and said, "Oh, he's a great anointed man of God." Meanwhile, he's having an affair with his secretary, divorces his wife, and then I think Bethel and some of those guys restore him. Does he go back to his wife? No. You know, and meanwhile, he's got a familiar spirit that he came and visited, that he picked up here in Portland, my hometown. That's the lesbian capital of the West Coast, and there's more witches and Satanists around here per capita, from what I've heard, than anywhere else around in this area. He picked up a spirit named Betsy or Susan or something, an angel that he could see in the room while he is having these meetings where people are going like this. Ah! You've seen those? Yeah. You've seen them where they're shaking, literally shaking their brains out. And this is the Holy Spirit? Oh, yeah. And I've seen Kenneth Hagin and Copeland. You've seen those videos where they're going like that, speaking in tongues at a meeting, and they're speaking in some Indian dialect, Sanskrit or something, or Hindi, and they're actually cursing God. And they're going, and they literally, you see that video? Literally slithered out of their chair, like a way I can't even do it, and literally like a snake, and on the floor, and they're sitting side by side doing this. That's not of Yehovah Elohim, folks. So I'd seen all this, and I had also seen what had gone on in the Vineyard Church, and in John Arnott's church in the Toronto Vineyard. And I talked to people that had been there. There was good things that went on there, but there was also bad things. Big time New Age. Benjamin Krem, who's dead now, they called him Lord Maitreya. Well, he was a pervert. Look, I've been through all this stuff, okay, guys? He claimed that what was going on there was helping to bring in the New World Order. And this guy is a Luciferian. He's dead now. James Krem from England. He was the harbinger of the Lord Maitreya. That goes back into the 80s. Remember Constance Comby? Look, I've read it all. I've forgotten more than most of you will even know about all this stuff. I'll be honest with you, okay? I've been through it all. And I realized, and I read John Arnott's book and the other book, and then he started he and his sidekick, they started the thing down in Pensacola, Florida, or wherever that was. And that revival, we're talking in the early to mid 90s. I read their books. I watched their videos. I read everything. I talked to people that were there. And there was good things that happened. But against this backdrop, I said, Lord, what is true and what is not true? And so I got up 6 weeks after I prayed that prayer. I got up and I said, Lord, he said, if you come to Torah and you follow the Torah, that will keep you from the influences of the world, the flesh, and the devil, including the counterfeits. Make no mistake about it. The gifts of the Spirit are real and are genuine. It's in the Bible. And all these things that happened to the prophets are in the Bible and is for us. All these other things in Buddhism, shamanism, all the other isms are all counterfeits. The enemy comes as an angel of light. They're the counterfeits. And he said, if you follow my Torah, you will not fall into those things. You will not be deceived by those things. You will not be deceived by what's happening at Bethel Church in Redding, California, or Airport Toronto Vineyard. The guy, they were so bad, John Wimber kicked them out of the vineyard, okay? You remember that one? Look, I've been around this. And Yah showed me these things. And so I came back, and when I got up off the floor, and he said, the Torah will keep you on the straight and narrow path. And I literally leapt up in this room and started dancing around. That was the one answer to two questions. Do I come back to Torah? Yes. I'm going to come back with dancing. And are the gifts of the Spirit real? Yes, they're genuine. But you got to follow my Torah. And that will keep you on the straight and narrow path. And I got up in this room. This is like 1999, so 24 years ago. I got up and I started singing and dancing. How love I thy Torah. It is my joy. I couldn't help myself. It is my meditation day and night. I started dancing around in this room and said it is more precious than gold and silver. And all that, just like David said in the Psalm 119. So that's my testimony. And I've been following and passionately pursuing the gifts of the Spirit, teaching about them, but also following the Torah with equal passion to this day. So help me, Yehovah Elohim. Again, that's my testimony, and I hope that this blessed somebody. I hope that encouraged somebody to stay with it, but do it according to the Bible and according to as Elohim has laid it out, walking in his straight and narrow path of loving Yeshua by keeping his commandments and not going to the left or to the right. Because on the side of the road of the straight and narrow path, there's a ditch, if not a canyon. And if you go too far to one extreme or too far to the other, you're going to be in that canyon. You might lose it all. And that's what some of these churches are playing with the angles and playing on the edges. They're playing on the edge of this stuff. Remember, there's 3 spheres out there in the spirit realm. 3 spheres. There is the Holy Spirit. There's the unholy spirit. That's the demonic realm. And in the middle, I wouldn't even call it a spirit realm, but you have the realm of the metaphysics, the metaphysical. Okay? Listen to me carefully. The metaphysical. It is neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It can go one direction or it can go the other direction. We do not understand the metaphysical. It is things that happen that we don't understand. This is something that Yah revealed to me back during the time when I was searching these things out in the 90s. In the metaphysical realm, let me explain what I mean. There are child prodigies who at a young age are geniuses. They know how to play the piano, and Mozart was somebody like that. They are mathematical geniuses at age 5, and they graduate from college at age 12. And mathematical geniuses. How can we explain that? There are people who are not saved and they just have premonitions about things. They just sense that something will happen. That's not demonic necessarily. That's just a sixth sense. That is somebody that has a gift and they can either use it, become a believer in Yeshua, and he can use that, and maybe out of that will come the gifts, maybe they'll become a prophet or a prophetess. Or maybe they'll become a psychic or a warlock or a sorcerer or a fortune teller. There's a lot of things we can't explain that are in the in the realm, the metaphysics realm, in the paranormal. There's another term. But Satan can get a hold of those things that are in people's lives and use them and pull them to his side. Or Yah can get a hold of them, and if they get saved and hitch their wagon to Yeshua, he will use them for his purposes. You understand what I mean? But this is a realm that we are not to mess around with. Barriers have been set out there so that we're not to step into that realm. Unless, you have a natural gift, but we're not to push into that. There are gates, and people can explain it better than me. Probably Janelle would have something to say about this. But we are limited to this physical realm, and we're only to experience that through the realm of the Spirit, through the Spirit, under the guidance of this Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, as led by the word of Elohim. Because if we step out of these areas and we get into this metaphysical, outside of this and outside of the leading of the Spirit, we open ourselves up to all kinds of potential things that are demonic. That's why it's very, very important that we do not engage and involve ourselves in substances psychotropic substances that alter our consciousness or alter our state of being. That includes getting drunk. That includes drugs, legal or illegal, marijuana, or anything like this. Because when that happens, the natural inhibitions, the ear gate, the eye gate, the natural guards that we have, our will, which keeps us from going into that, come down, the inhibitions. Look, half the time that people, I'm going to be blunt here, but half the time that young people lose their virginity and they fornicate, it's been after they've been drinking alcohol. Why do you think that is? Well, you can figure it out. Your inhibitions come down and you're relaxed and things happen. Or maybe after they've smoked a few joints or something of marijuana. It happens. And if they go into it further, it'll open themselves up into all kinds of, paranormal, psychotropic stuff. If they, go into LSD or some of these things and have these trips. We don't want to go there. Because the enemy is there to suck people in and pull us into all kinds of stuff. That's why we don't touch that stuff. But genuine workings and gifts of the Spirit, by the Spirit, as Yehovah wills, under the power of the Spirit, and it doesn't put us in altered states of consciousness. I have moved in almost all the gifts of the Spirit, and I've never been in an altered consciousness. I've had my mind with me. I've never lost it. So this whole idea that when you speak in tongues, blah, 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 you go into, no, that is demonic. I've been speaking in tongues for over 30 years. And I have gone up against demons that tried to take me out. Literally tried to kill me. And tongues has delivered me from that instantly. It happened at that New Age church where I told you about the lady, the keynote speaker. I had an encounter there in their prayer room. A demon tried to take me out. Literally, I was about to pass out. I couldn't even speak. It was like I was like in a state of sleep paralysis. I was standing. I was about to go down, and I couldn't even talk. I went into tongues, and the thing lifted. And I've given this testimony before. It's not anything. I've had a lot of experiences like that, or a few. I shouldn't say a lot. A few in my spiritual warfare encounters. Been in a lot of places, just like a lot of you. It's real, folks. It is real. And some of you who have not experienced it, I'm sorry, I'm telling you the truth. As a man of Elohim, judge righteous judgment, and I'll back everything up in the word of Elohim. But don't step out of the Torah. Don't step out of a personal, close relationship with Yeshua. And a lot of people say they have a close relationship with Yeshua, but they're going against the Torah. To the degree that they do that, that's the degree that they are opening themselves up to other things. And that's all I will say about that.